Hey guys, welcome back to the Crosley RCA 630TS clone. When we left off, I had done an initial power-up, vented this cap, which spewed out this way. It's what this white residue is down here. We bypassed that, and we were able to power it up and get a raster. Since then, I replaced this cap, the little stubby one next to it, and one up here, and I've replaced most of the paper caps. Really, the only ones that are left, I believe, are the ones down here, which are a real pain to get at. If you ever think about recapping one of these. These are the audio circuit, the volume controls right here, and the contrast controls gang to it. There are 5 or 6 paper caps that really go up all in there that are quite a challenge to get out. Anyway, with those left in, let's try another power up. So we have done 3 of the multi-can electrolytics. There's 3 more to go. Yeah, there's 6 can electrolytics in this set. And as I mentioned, a few paper caps. I believe it has a full complement of good tubes in it. So, let's see what she can do now. Alright, here we go. Signal source turned on. Hook up to the antenna terminals. Let's get this turned on. If you've never been around one of these suckers draw a lot of power. There's 30 tubes in there. I forget how many watts exactly. I believe it's over 300 watts, this thing draws down. Ooh. Well, that's actually the tone I'm feeding into it. Well, that's good. So we got some sound now. The raster's looking better. Don't particularly like that buzz. But as I say, we still haven't finished the recap. But a high voltage buzz too, I think. So this is drawing just under 2 amps. So not quite as much power as I said, but it's still a pretty significant amount. Let's see, how much line voltage do I have going in? Yeah, right about 117. So, video. What about a video? I'm feeding on a multi-burst bar sweep right now. I don't really see that. Brightness control is not really doing what it should be doing, so it's minimum brightness right now, and it really didn't change a whole lot. I'm playing with the contrast here. Looks like there might sort of kind of be something coming in. Let's see, horizontal hold. That's looking a little more like something. So really common issue with all these sets is the horizontal frequency is off. It could be why it's buzzing too. On this set they make it real easy. There's a synchro lock control on the back which goes to the slug of the horizontal oscillator transformer. There's actually a little knob on the end of it. So it's, in other words, it's right out there for you to easily adjust. So I suspect when they designed this set, they knew it would need to be tweaked now and then. So I'm going counterclockwise. Doesn't seem to be getting any better. Let's see, let's go for minimum brightness. Try going clockwise. They're getting closer. The idea is as you get closer and closer to the right frequency, you should see fewer and fewer diagonal lines. And yes we are. I think that's locked horizontally right there. Rolling vertically though. It's a little hard to tell with this pattern. Let's try something else. So that's the circle pattern. Oof. It's hard to tell. Sort of kind of something coming in there. That's right, the contrast. There it is. The contrast on these is goofy. Again, another quirk if you never worked on one of these before. There's no AGC. And you might think, well, the higher I turn up the contrast, the more gain there is. Sort of, kind of. Especially with this brightness control seemingly not working. You have to play around with the contrast. Too much gain, it gets washed out. Too little gain, there's nothing there. But in between, I can see the pattern there. It's not locking. Almost. Let's tweak the horizontal a little bit. Alright. The vertical's locked, but it's locked like halfway off. Just kind of goofy. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Now we can let's see if that brightness does anything now. Let's try feeding in some video. It's really hard to tell. But yeah, there are some ghostly images there. Alright, so yeah. That's great. We gotta figure out what's going on with that brightness. It's overdriving everything. And nice to get rid of that buzz too. So I'm going to check out this brightness control. It's this guy in the far left. Make sure it's not open. It might just need some deoxit. Or maybe there's a bad connection going to it. And we'll go from there. Once you get an image on the CRT, everything gets so much easier because it is its own piece of test equipment. You can see if it's working right by what you see on the screen. Likewise with the speaker for the sound. Alright, let's get that nut off. This off carefully. Easier said than done. You do have to fold this a little bit. Alright, so looks okay. Let's get a meter on that and see. Check the brightness control. It's fine. The voltages on either side of it are pretty darn perfect too. So I traced out the wiring, goes to this little filtering network here, it's fine. Traced it out to the DC restore circuit. Down here is 6AL5. I found a 1 meg resistor that was measuring about 2.7 meg. I thought, aha, found it, replaced that, made no difference. Finished checking out the first and second video amp stages. Everything seems fine. Power it up, check the voltages. It's scary. They're all within about 5-10% of what are stated in the schematics, so no problems whatsoever. So I got to thinking back when I restored one of these chassis years ago, and I had trouble with the IF stages, and I recalled other people have too. It's a little bit different than later designs in that they coupled all the stages with capacitors. 270 picofarad, 270 picofarad, 270, 270. You can see them all here in the schematic. Plate to grid, plate to grid, plate to grid between all the 6HE5s. Well, typically micas are pretty stable, but the one problem you can have with them is when there's a lot of voltage across them. And if you look on these, like 135 plate, and then the other side goes through a coil to ground. So you have 135 volts DC across it. And similar on the other ones. So I started checking them. Now these have pretty heavy thick leads on them, and if you try to unwrap it, unsolder it from the tube socket pin, I think you're more liable to do damage. So I just clip them out. So I already clipped this guy out. no leakage, but it's measuring more like 400 instead of 270. And I got to this guy. I'm getting nothing. Absolutely nothing on my bridge. And this thing is fairly accurate. It's all been recapped and such. 270's around here. And there's just nothing. It's an open circuit. It's not leaky, but there's no capacitance. I want to check a couple more. Hopefully I got some 270s on hand, but I'm thinking we're losing a lot of gain on the front end, which is affecting things adversely downstream. It seems odd that it would affect brightness, but there's that's not good. That's not a good cap, and it's pretty critical to the circuit. So let's check the rest of them and replace any more that are bad. Alright, so I've tested 4 so far. 2 completely open, 1 off value. This one's also off value, but not horribly, so I left it in. Luckily I did have 5 replacements. I think I ordered these a while ago in anticipation of working on another one of these someday. 2 I installed neatly, 1 I just tacked in because it's getting late and I really want to know is this going to make a difference or not. Eventually I'll replace all 5 of them. Let's see if it did us any good. Well, I'll spare you. It really made little difference. But there was one I hadn't tested yet, because it's difficult to get at, because one end of it's going inside the tuner. But I got down in there, cut out one end, clipped on my test leads, and check this out. It's crazy leaky. Well, the others weren't leaky, but this one's showing shorted. So that's not going to help matters any. So let's try to extract that guy. And not going to be easy. I might have to take the cover off the tuner, which I recall wasn't particularly easy. So one end goes to pin 1, the grid of the 6AG5. The other end just goes down somewhere inside that box. Ugh. Well, it's not going to win any awards, but I'm about to go to bed and I really, really would like to see a better picture out of this set, so I just tacked that in as best I could. Let's give it one more try. Well, this is curious. So I've replaced all 5 mica caps now, and the image is looking more defined. It's looking better. But the brightness control still isn't really doing anything. That is so weird. Well, it looks like we have a double image too, like the vertical is running at twice the frequency or something that it should be. Playing with the contrast control a little bit. One thing I'm going to try to do now is just directly inject some video into the grid of the first video amp, just to see if we can get a really clear image that way. Try to break this down into the circuit that's really got the problem. But that helped. That helped for sure. Replacing all 5 of these guys. So I'm using my TVA92 now to output a video signal, and this will tell you right on there what amplitude you have. So I have 1.5 volts peak to peak, and that's what the service info says should be on the grid of the first video amp. And if I do that, it's looking pretty darn crummy. It looks about the same as when I'm going through the antenna. And it's having trouble with the vertical sync, where it's like sinking halfway through, or it's running off frequency. And I'm going through the full rotation of the brightness control. It makes the picture jump around, but the brightness doesn't really vary. So there's something very strange going on. One thing I want to check is, what is the G2 voltage on the CRT? And in general, what are the voltages on the grid, the cathode, and G2 as I'm varying that? As maybe there's a problem with the CRT connection, or the voltages go into it, and yeah, I don't know. This is a strange one. Well, RCA includes this nice little voltage chart here, a little bit different than Sam's, which has a grid of 2 pin numbers. They break it up by plate, screen, cathode grid, in other words, function. I checked these voltages in the CRT base by temporarily popping it off, powering up the set, and they're fine. Pin 10, we got about 265, that's close enough. The cathode, yeah, was 0, and the grid, which is supposed to vary with brightness, went from about 0 to minus 85. Not quite minus 100, but by the laws of physics, basically, the brightness should vary when I change that control. So now I'm starting to wonder, is there something up with my little bench CRT? I've used the heck out of it over the years, and I got it used in the first place, so maybe it's a little wonky. Or I do have the focus coil in place, which in the past when I've used it, could make the image out of focus, but it wouldn't mess up the brightness. So, just to eliminate it, and to check this out, I pulled the full-size picture tube out of the garage. It's filthy, so I can clean it up. And I'll flip the set down and put some padding under it because there's no support for it on the chassis. And temporarily hook it up and see what we get with this guy. Well, with the full-size CRT, the brightness control works. Wow, that's a first. It's not working great. It's hard to get the sync going well. The contrast control, I mean, I'd always heard it was finicky on these sets, and yeah. And I still have that weird issue with the vertical where we're seeing like 1.5 frames superimposed or something. But yeah, and it's a really sharp picture too, issues aside. So yeah, it's another weird one. I gotta figure out what's up with my test CRT because I need that thing, or I need to get a replacement, which are not easy to come by. I do have the 8-inch rectangular version I can use in a pinch. Now, ignoring the vertical, let's go to a crosshatch. Yeah, see how that horizontal linearity is just absolutely horrible? If you recall, there's a huge power resistor in the high voltage box, and it's covered with corrosion. I've felt it after I've had the set running, and it's cold, so I'm sure it's open. It's a really common problem with these early sets. So, now that we know this is okay, and I haven't finished recapping this, by the way, either. I still have 3 electrolytic cans to do, and a handful of paper caps on the end. That's why I've been ignoring the buzzing problem. Yeah, I know it's annoying and it's there, but I'll get to it. I was more concerned with the washed out image. So, between replacing the mica caps and then whatever the heck is up with my test CRT, it looks like we've got a lot of potential there with the image. That is the power resistor I'm talking about. That is a critical component for the linearity to be correct. It works in conjunction with the damper tube, so we most definitely need to replace that. I want to take this box off anyways and clean all this stuff. There's a lot of accumulated dust, dust bunnies and whatnot, which can cause corona, arcing and stuff. I want to clean all this out. It's a little annoying to do on these sets because they mount some of these components, like the flyback, the width coil, to the box itself. And the high voltage lead runs through this, and the stuff is riveted. So, what you can do is carefully undo all these screws, and the flyback and width control will just kind of be hanging here. They won't be supported. But if you're careful, you can clean around here, undo all these screws, kind of slide the high voltage lead through that, move it over to the side, and you can get in here and get a towel and clean all that crud out. So that is what I think I'll do next.